Hey, it's Steve, welcome to my shop. Now, as a YouTuber, I obviously make a lot of video, but specifically as a maker of videos for shop work, I do shoot a lot of video where you see the laser working, and it does look kind of cool because you got laser light scattering all over and some kind of magic is happening underneath it. But from my perspective, it's a bit of a drag because if I'm trying to show you something engraving, most often, especially with some of the modern diode lasers, the laser module is really big and it's always in the way. Now what I wanted to do is show you this. This is the Lasercam from Mintion, and it's specifically designed as a camera to serve two purposes on any laser really, but specifically diode lasers. And the first of those is to act as a Lightburn camera where you can stick it overhead and you can use it to show you where the material is and whether your job is going to fit in the material that's available. The second option is to shoot things like time-lapse video, and that's the aspect that I'm interested in because I shoot a lot of that, and I want to be able to show you something being engraved or cut out without the laser module being in the way, and this will let me do that. And that's enough context to get going here, so let's get started. So in the box, it's well packed. You get a manual, of course. It's well illustrated. Then you get a gooseneck type mount for putting it over top of your laser. You get a tripod mount if you want to just mount it separately, a swivel mount for the end of either of those, and then a clamp for the gooseneck so you can mount it on the back of your laser. There's some cards here for doing calibration if you want to use this as a Lightburn camera. Then all the cabling, there's an adapter, a power cable, a fire detection cable, a pen for some reason, and then the cables to hook the laser into the camera. So really that simple. The camera itself comes separately packaged in the box, and you can see it's got a Wi-Fi antenna on the back and a focusable lens on the front. So that's the package, and we'll get it set up. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time here talking about how to set this up as a Lightburn camera. There's lots of tutorials, and the fact that this is a laser cam versus any other camera is the same, so it doesn't really matter. But I set up the camera using the multi-jointed arm and pointed straight down at the workspace, and then I went into the camera calibration. Now it may ask you to calibrate the lens first. There's a laser tools option to do that as well. And after that, you print this card with the 4 targets on it and click on the 4 targets that got taken in the photo. And that's it. It's pretty simple. So, you know, the instructions are really good. It's basically you can't make a mistake. And then when you go back to camera control, you can see what's on the camera. And if you hit the update desktop, what is on the camera will show up on your desktop. And that's good if you have materials where you maybe have a hole and you want to know if the piece you're working on is going to fit. You can, you know, do this exact thing with your material and you'll know whether your project is going to fit on it or not. So Lightburn is pretty simple. That's not the most interesting capability of this camera though. Now, in order to communicate with the Mintion Lasercam, you need to install some software, of course. So you have to install the software on your phone first because that's where you set up things like Wi-Fi. There's a few other things in there that you'll also set up, but you need that because you need to know what the IP address is, and the reason is because you can also control this completely from your computer using your browser on this web page. There's actually a web server built into the camera, and that's how you communicate with it. And once you're there, you'll get a thing that looks very much like this, where you have a picture of whatever the camera's seeing right now, plus some control to control your laser. I actually have my laser plugged into the camera, and I'll show you how to do that in a bit. But what that allows you to do is then control your laser directly from here. And you can see I can connect, I can move my laser around. If I can actually move it into camera here so you can see that it's truly moving. And that lets you do things like setup and all the normal things that you would do from something like Lightburn. The other thing you'll see here is a file list, and I can upload a file where I can just pick some arbitrary file. It doesn't really matter. This is a G-code file, and again, I'll show you how I generated these files, but you get some basic controls here that control the laser, the actual job, just like you would in Lightburn. So for example, you can frame and it will show you where framing is going to go. You would of course be looking at the laser, not the camera. And then you can actually click this button to start. If you didn't want this job, you could just delete it and it goes away. Now, the last thing you need to do is disconnect your laser from the USB to your computer and plug it into the USB on the camera. And that's as simple as just popping it into that connector that's on the back. And what that does is now puts your camera in control of the laser. All right, so I have a physical connection to the camera, between the camera and the laser. Now I need to do a software connection. I just hit the connect button up there. And once you see the disconnect, it's actually connected. So I can hit the home button and you'll see it goes off and does a home. So now all I really have to do is click the start button and the job will start going. Now in this mode, the camera is essentially a monitor. It's not doing anything other than capturing video. You can use your phone to look at the live status. So if you're across your workshop doing something and you want to make sure that the laser is still running, you can do that. That's another kind of typical use case where you're distracted, but you want to make sure that you're not out of touch with your laser, because hey, bad things can happen. So you can use it in that mode. The mode I want to use it in though is time-lapse mode. Now if I'm going to do a time-lapse, what I need to do is enable the camera to do time-lapse. So if you look at just on the main dashboard, normal video recording is off and time-lapse is off, which means we were just in monitor mode. But I want to turn on time-lapse, so I can go to settings and select time-lapse, and there's 3 different settings here which just determine how your camera is going to react. I'm going to choose clean, because what clean does is it does a bit of engraving on your laser job, then it moves the laser head out of the way, and it takes a stream of frames for the time-lapse video, and then it brings the laser back in to do some more. And what that really means is you get a stream of video, or what looks like video, without the laser head, but you see that increasing. In my case, it'll be engraving. You'll see the engraving just start to appear, but the laser head won't be there, and it's a really cool effect. So how that works is you select, in my case, clean if you don't want the laser module there, and then you select the frame rate, which means every 15 frames that it shoots in time-lapse constitutes 1 second, and then the time interval is every 5 seconds it's going to shoot one of those frames. The X and Y coordinates here are where you park the laser head when you're taking those images in time-lapse, and of course the move speed is obvious. That's how fast it gets out of the way, and that's all you have to do. So we can save that and go back to the file list, and we can do this engrave, and I'll record that and you'll see how it looks. The finished product looks kind of cool. I've zoomed in on it a bit here, but you can see it just kind of cascades in. The laser is out of the way. Looks really cool, and it's exactly the effect I was hoping for. So you'll probably see this in a few videos going forward. So I do like that you can use this in a couple of different ways. It can be a monitoring tool. It can just be a regular imaging tool for shooting things. You can use it in Lightburn. You can do time-lapse. That's actually kind of cool. So it isn't really a single-purpose camera, which is fantastic. Time-lapse output is great. You saw it there. Very quick job, but it came out fantastic. And there's quite a few mounting options. There's certainly that long arm that you can mount on top of the laser. There's also the tripod, and if you just want to mount this on a regular camera mount, you can do that as well. So all in all, lots of ways to mount this. Now, there were a couple of things I didn't like as well. First of all, it does add time to the job if you're engraving, especially if you're doing time-lapse, because it has to do some engraving, move the laser out of the way, take an image, move the laser back, do some more engraving, and so on. That adds time. Now, it isn't unexpected. I mean, you're paying a price to get that cool time-lapse effect with the laser out of the way. Next on the list, that long arm with all the elbows in it that's supposed to keep your camera mounted over top of your laser, that's actually pretty flimsy. I wouldn't use that, honestly, if I was using this in my shop on a full-time basis. If I had my laser in a cabinet, I would mount the camera to the roof of the cabinet, or find some other mounting mechanism just to make it easier. And cable management here finally is a bit chaotic. There's at least 3 wires coming from the camera potentially. There's the power for the camera, the USB from between your computer and the camera, and another USB from the camera to your laser. And you have to figure out how to route all that stuff. So it's a bit of a challenge. Nothing that can't be handled, but if you're moving this camera around from one laser to another, it can be a mess. So it's not the end of the world, but it's something that you need to be aware of. Anyway, all in all, I think the camera is great. It's priced around $220, I believe, on Mintion's website. It's also available on Amazon. I'll put affiliate links down below if you're interested in buying one of these, and we'll wind down. So get out there, make your world, and I'll see you next time.